Welcome, everybody. So glad you're hanging out with us here today on the Tech Vibe Radio One Mic Stand. This is Jonathan Kirsting, of course, the Tech Vibe Radio and the Pittsburgh Technology Council. I know everyone out there, we're all getting a little antsy. We're seeing some glimmers that we're going to return to work spaces soon. We've all been working hard at home, but we all kind of miss our offices and stuff like that. And I'm looking forward to getting back. But when we do get back, I know it's going to be a little bit different. I know they're going to have people spaced out further. And I know as people start planning spaces in the future, there's new considerations due to what we've all been through. That's why I'm really excited to talk to our friends from Stantec here. I've got three people here. I have the industry experts on all things around this, and I'm so glad to be talking to them today. We have Rachel Bannon Godfrey, Angie Lee, and William Britton, otherwise known as Britt, from what I can tell when we were spinning this thing up as far as that goes. So guys, thanks for hanging out with us today. And I'd love to start with some introductions. Angie, could you start with you and what you do with Stantec?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Angie Lee. I am a vice president at Stantec, and my job at Stantec is I'm responsible for looking after the workplace and office sector. I am a registered architect, and I've been in this business, if you will, for over 30 years, if you can believe that. Have seen lots of different changes and evolution. Very excited to be, on the radio show today with Jonathan and my colleagues.
Absolutely. And Rachel, what's your background with Stantec?
Yeah, thanks. I'm really thrilled to be here. So I lead the practice of sustainability for Stantec buildings across the globe. And my background is a mixture of architecture and building performance engineering and sustainability consulting. So all of those worlds kind of collide in this role. And I live in Colorado, but I'm working on projects ranging from Antarctica all the way over to California, and looking at that mix of sustainability, resilience, building performance. And I'm so proud of the teams that I lead. They're really phenomenal.
That's quite an array of projects. Antarctica, for crying out loud. Like that's really excellent. And then Britt, what's up with your background?
I work in corporate commercial. I've been doing it for about 25 years. I work out of the interior design department. We help a lot of local and businesses up and down the East Coast, help define the space that they want to be in, what that space is going to look like, and how they plan on using it.
Very cool. Like I said, I can't think of three better people to be hanging out with to talk about what we're talking about today. So I really thank you for your time doing that. And the big thing on our minds right now, like we're all confronted as we're going back to the office with a lot of short-term kind of changes that are going to be happening, how workplaces are going to be different now. Anyone want to address kind of some of those immediate things that we can be that if you're an employer out there that you should be doing so your workspace is safe and so forth.
So maybe I can start a little bit with the bigger picture in terms of long term.
Okay.
Knowing that the office workplace, I think it's going to change forever. From where we were before to what is going to happen in the future.
Yeah.
Primarily, if I have to pinpoint like three areas of change, and that is through this whole. I call this the big experiment of working remotely.
Yeah. Proved it can kind of work, right?
Right, and there were so many non-believers, and many of our clients are very traditional. Some are not. We have a lot of tech-based clients as well. That I think the remote work is here to stay. We actually recently just sent out a survey to a selected group of clients, and the survey results came back and 86% of our clients said remote work is here to stay, and that this is going to be a long-term consideration for how they are going to approach work in the future. The second part about the big change in the long term is choice. I think that employees will be given or will be considered having choices of where and when and how they want to work because of this giant experiment that we have gone through to prove that, it does work, and people are getting the work done. They're doing, work productively, and it's now a choice of where they want to do the focus work versus coming back to the office to do the focus work.
See, I've been thinking about that a lot myself. Yeah, I like this. Good stuff.
Right?
Going. Yeah,
right.
Sure.
Exactly. And the third piece is really health and wellness. It used to be a perk that we talk about, a healthy work environment and, wellness in the workplace. But, in the future of workplace office design, health and wellness is going to be a major factor. So coming back to the short term, a few things that we're looking at counseling, if you will, some of our client is consider a staggered approach, really identifying, the individuals who really need to be in the office to come back to work. And the rest of the people maybe continue on remote work, and some will return to the office for collaboration and, the social thing and, meeting face to face and that sort of thing. But, use a staggered approach.
I've been hearing a lot about the staggered approach too. I think we're actually considering that at the Tech Council, where half are in, half are out. When you're not in, you're working from home, and it's going to be interesting like that. So I'm glad.
Yeah, and also the days, right?
Stuff. Right.
Yeah, the days that you come back into the work. Social distancing is something we're working with our clients on. The 6 foot distance, where the desks are going to be placed, and of course, no one's going to be changing out, the furniture layout or, taking down walls and all of that.
Right.
But there's a way that you can start looking at your floor plan to apply the philosophy and tactical approach of a 6 foot distancing, including maybe taking out certain seatings within, conference rooms so that the capacity is a little bit reduced. The other thing is, and this you need to really look at your plan and, looking at your local code and life safety for exiting relative to travel distance. But most corridors in office environments are not 6 foot. I mean, it's not close to 6 feet, maybe 5 for me.
Okay, right.
So, consider, maybe one-way trafficking, circulation pattern, but again, making sure that, you reflect the exiting requirement for your particular location.
See, I've been hearing some crazy tales of like no more coffee machines or the refrigerator, like anything you can touch repeatedly is like, out. Please say that's not so.
Or some people say, don't have people bring lunch in to the office because, that is a hotbed of potential, germ location. So yeah, let's hope that is not the case either. Some of the other short-term consideration for base building is security, elevator access. How do you call elevators? How many people can go into the elevators to go up to your floors, all the way to going kind of back to the stagger hours, peak hours, queuing, coming into the building, have a process and protocol in place. The other thing that, I know Rachel's going to touch on here in a little bit is indoor air quality.
Okay.
We've been working with our engineers to put some kind of a guidebook together, and that guidebook is going to be ready, in fact, in the next couple of days, and we'll make sure that you get a copy of that.
Send us links for that. We will add, because I think people are really concerned about air quality, and I'm so glad you guys are going to be addressing that today. Very cool.
Yeah, there are really top 3 areas that our engineers are suggesting that, all buildings should take a look at is changing all the filters out, performing air quality assessment, and finally, increasing concentration of outdoor air intake. Those are at the minimal, 3 things to look for. Sanitation, again, it's really people's confidence level. There's so much fear right now. Is it safe to come back to work? The air that I breathe, the things that I touch. So, the nightly sanitation, which I'm sure you guys have been, talking, quite a bit about as well, but also having an abundance of sanitation station around in common areas and high traffic areas, conference rooms and phone rooms. I mean, places that you normally don't think about, have those available as well. And then lastly, signage. It's really an often forgotten area. So signage, not just, for directional and instructional, but also for communication. That, this place has been cleaned, or whatever the function might be, to make sure people know what has been done. So as a
build that confidence so people know that it's safe, right? Exactly.
Correct.
Exactly.
Correct.
Yeah.
So I'm going to turn it over to Rachel to talk a little bit about, what you think relative to short term?
Yeah, especially around the air quality stuff too. I'm really curious about that.
Yeah, thank you, Angie. And you did a really nice job of talking about the full spectrum of things that can be done. And I think that there's people really need to be able to prioritize. So there's so much information coming at us, move your desks apart, think about, like you said, Angie, how do you call for an elevator without having to touch the button and so on.
Hold your elbow like this.
Well, they sell these keys now that you can.
I saw those. I want to get a couple of those.
Me too.
I'm expecting to see those stickers on the floor when you step into an elevator where we have to stand like you're at Disney World, so many people park.
Oh, God.
There you go.
We're going to see a fashion world return to the elbow patch on jackets and things.
Exactly.
Yeah. So there's three areas to think about, and there's kind of a hierarchy of controls of things you can do, ranging from the most effective to the least effective. So the first is engineering controls. The second is administrative controls, and the third is PPE. Right? PPE should be your last line of defense.
Okay.
I'll talk a bit about that as why. So let's talk about first engineering controls. That is, you're using engineering and design to isolate people from the hazard. Right? So for example, in a building, and this is, I should preface, the very first thing you should do is to eliminate the hazard. So we're in that phase right now where people are working from home. We're eliminating the hazard of coming into the workplace. But obviously, as we return back into workplaces, the next thing to do is engineering, administrative, and PPE. So for engineering controls, you're looking at how do you isolate people away from the hazard. And a lot of attention, as Angie rightly pointed out, is being put on the airflow in buildings. So looking at, do you increase your ventilation flow rates? You're trying to get air out of the building faster.
Is it possible to do that? Sometimes some of us, like our buildings, like you can't open windows, right? And I've even heard stories that future buildings are now going to have windows that are going to open up again.
Well, that would be one of the long-term consequences of this particular pandemic. Is I think the industry as a whole will need to start considering natural ventilation where the climate, is conducive for it. But some of our buildings in Vancouver, for instance, are already employing the natural ventilation.
Right. In Copenhagen, there's that a lot too. In Denmark, I was there last year.
Right.
They love all the and see, we need that. All buildings should have air flowing through at all times from outside.
Germany is the other location where, windows are operable.
Yeah, well, and also some more tropical locations where you walk into restaurants or hotels and it's open air lobbies, and the restaurants don't actually have windows or outdoors, and we're seeing a lot of people are moving outdoors to eat.
Right.
And so on. So a lot of the advice is coming out. You have to put on the lens of, is this affordable? Is this feasible in the building?
Exactly.
What does the budget look like? And also within an existing building, maybe there's only so many things you can do. But something you can do is right now in a lot of buildings, for example, at around 5 or 6 p.m., you may notice that the air seems to almost hear it shut down. There's that shutdown mode or that turn down mode that buildings go into when people at the end of the workday, right? It's not to turn down the ventilation flow rates. Well, now we're seeing recommendations, just keep that air running all the time.
Keep it going. I like that idea.
Well, so that, you see the environmental benefit of let's open the windows and get natural ventilation, but then hold on a second, we've got the ventilation running 24/7 instead of just there's give and take.
Trouble, man. We're in trouble.
Yeah, because some other engineering controls you can look at is putting up physical barriers between people. And I know that nobody wants to see a return back to the 80s kind of office space where we've just got these big partitions between everybody after having seen what more open workspaces look like.
Their walls are going right back up, man, with a dome on top too, right?
Yeah. But that is another thing, physical barriers between people. Or if you have a number of conference rooms, some offices have a whole suite of conference rooms for meetings, well, maybe turn those into single-use offices so that instead of people coming together.
Right.
So that's engineering and design, and that is really the most effective because you're isolating people from the hazard. And the next thing is administrative controls. This is changing how people work. So, Angie, you talked about the staggered work days. Or letting people work from home for longer. We've seen large corporations recently announce that they're going to let people work from home through 2021.
Right.
finding out. So one thing that a lot of people are missing is that face-to-face time for collaboration. So how do you look at the virtual tools that you have to let people collaborate without actually physically having 10 people in a meeting room for that brainstorm over lunch? So we're going to see a lot more use of virtual tools, and signage is so important. Thank you, Angie, for mentioning that, because imagine people are going to come back into their workplaces with a range of ranging from excitement to anxiety and fear and the unknown. And so if as the very first time you cross the threshold of your workspace, if it's really clear, you see signs, whether it's actual signage or you see things have changed, that sends a signal saying it's okay, we've taken steps to make sure that this is a safe space, and that something has changed. It's not just business as usual, because we know life is not back to usual and
No.
Yeah, exactly. So,
I think communication between building owners and managers with the tenants is going to be huge to help them feel more confident in returning to work.
It's a good point, Britt.
Well, yeah, I think fundamentally people are going to ask, or we should be asking, why are people coming back to the office, knowing that remote work is a possibility, and it's it could work for many, not all, but office workers. So in our survey, when I think I was telling you about, we send the survey out, the number one ranked number one is people coming into the office to collaborate with each other. And to Rachel's point, when we start to look at the design of office spaces, as an example, back, let's say 10 years ago, I would say about 70% of the real estate portfolio, for an office is dedicated to what we call personal spaces, private offices, your cubicles or your workstation. The other 30% is for collaboration spaces. So kind of, going back to what we're talking about, what does the office of the future look like? It's going to change. The proportion of personal space versus collaboration space, I'll bet you, is going to completely switch around. That people come back to the office, it has to collaborate, right? Versus, we know, Rachel, me, Britt, you, we can, do all of our heads down focus work probably even better remotely from our home office with less distraction and less disruption. Whereas the reason why we come back is to collaborate and have that face-to-face. So designing of the office environment, I think, will have a fundamental shift in terms of proportion of what we call the public space versus personal space.
Right. You see this, obviously, this is just moving forward for perpetuity, that the fact that as we build new spaces or people go back to retrofit spaces because it's time to do a refresh on their space, all these considerations are going to come into play now. So if this ever happens again, people are safe, people are confident, always working through the office, knowing that there's the right amount of space between them, that the air quality is great, that, that the surfaces aren't completely full of germs and people touching it all the time. It's just like, it's tough being a human being in this world.
The important thing you just brought up is the time scale. Nobody really knows the time scale. So, I would say that don't do any short-term hacks that would not be resilient in the long term.
Right.
We don't know when we're going to switch from what does short-term mean? What does long-term mean? In the perspective of what we're going through right now. So, in the short term, are we going to be coming to the office all wearing face masks? And if so, how do we collaborate, and how do we still maintain a culture when you can only see people's eyes and you can't see people's faces, their smiles, for example?
I'm going to paint on a mouth over my face mask.
That's right.
Gotta have some fun with it, right? That's gonna be the new normal. It's like, here we go.
Yeah.
But I'm curious, is like, so, it seems like in the next month or so, we could really hopefully start thinking about the fact that we want to get some people back to the offices. And it seems like it's going to take a lot of time to make sure that there's enough space and there's the signage and all the stuff that we've been talking about. It just seems like there's so much to happen in such a short period of time. It's why people need Stantec, right? I mean, it's like, this is where you guys shine. You're able to provide this assistance. You're able to help companies, especially large companies, be able to kind of take this type of task on.
I would also say that in addition to looking at the physical environment, which absolutely as designers and architects, that's something that, is right up our alley. We should also consider company culture and the types of industries that our clients are in. because the culture is going to drive, whether it's a staggered approach that, Uber, only like a few people come back to the office, or 50% of the workforce need to be back in the office, and be able to come up with the right sort of mix of types of spaces to adhere to that social distancing, sanitation, hygiene, and then on top of that, all the security protocol and the indoor air quality stuff that Rachel was talking about based on occupancy.
Absolutely. All such good points.
There's two things you can do now. Is one is get practical quickly. Just do whatever you can quickly within your time and your budget. Flush out your building, because there are buildings that haven't been occupied for a while, and there's stagnant air and particularly water. Water is a significant source of contamination, pathogens. But also think bigger in your team. Whatever team you've assembled to help with your re-entry, bring in a commissioning agent, a building commissioning agent, who will go through and make sure that the filters have been changed, or that the thermostats are still working, and the taps have been flushed through. Bring in human resources, because we are going to see a significant mental health crisis.
Yes.
People are freaked out and they're unstable, and it's trauma at the end of the day to a huge degree, right?
It really is, particularly for maybe some people who've been on their own for 3-4 months, and suddenly coming back into a hustling, bustling workplace. That can be a bit jarring, or the other way around. And you had to laugh when you were talking about how we all collaborate better at home. I would add a little asterisk on that, is depending on whether schools are open.
yeah, that's right. Little kids at home. Yeah, true.
Yeah, but I mean, really,
different types of disruption.
Different types of disruption. So just think big with your team, the team that you're using to help you get back into your office. Bring in designers as well. For us in our sustainability team, we talk as much about the physical aspects of sustainability as we do the social, the kind of psychological.
I mean, it all goes together. It all knits together, because it all knits together. Beings and spaces and stuff like that. So,
one of the things that we haven't really touched on is actually getting into the office, the commute in, and what people are going to have to consider as they decide how do they want to return to work. Are they going to take public transportation? Are they going to, drive in themselves? Where are they going to park? And then what's it going to be involved, and what safety measures have public transportation put in place to ensure that they're going to be safe on the buses? And these are things that I know Pat Transit has taken steps to try to minimize risk of contamination. But I think people are going to have to become educated as to what those risks are, and then make a personal decision for themselves and how comfortable they feel in just commuting now.
Absolutely. All such good points. There's so much work in front of us, and I think we've barely nibbled at the edges of this. And I think people need to go to your website and check more stuff out. As you said, you have lots of information on there. If people go to Stantec.com?
Yeah, Stantec.com. There's an ideas. You click on that, and there's a COVID-19 page, and it's got all kinds of information in there. A lot of blogs, a lot of how-tos. And that sort of thing. And we also have a couple of pieces that's almost ready. Now
so
make sure
updating that site regularly, obviously, as this thought leadership comes out, because I just think it's so important. And you guys are so recognized in the industry. This is what you guys do. I mean, at the end of the day, and so much of it's going to change. And I just think we just getting our mind wrapped around this to get ready, I think it's just so important. You brought up all the aspects. I mean, everything from the mental side of things all the way down to making sure there's signs, that there's clean air. I mean, I think our bases have been covered. It's just so much. I'm a little overwhelmed.
One step at a time.
I know, one step at a time. And meanwhile, I'll be here in my attic. So.
That's right.
Well, it's funny because it's not that this is a different process for us. It's a different reason in why we're performing the process.
Right.
A lot of times in the past, it has been space utilization has been with the thought of how do we reduce overhead? How do we save companies money? What size space do I need as a company? And what's that going to look at? Now we've just thrown in a new element, and there's a new driving force behind this, which is going to be, in this case, COVID-19. How are we going to work together? What's that space going to look like? How much space do we need? And so it's not a process that's foreign to us. So it's not like catching us completely off guard, but what we need to do is adapt the new social distancing, these new procedures for buildings and how they're going to monitor the flow of traffic and implement those. And I think it's going to be a decision per company. And
yeah, it's going to be a little bit different for everybody, I think, at the end, right?
Is absolutely going to drive what's important to you and what's not important to you.
Love it. Guys, I can't thank you enough for taking the time to talk to us today. What a great conversation. Really good. Stantec.com and check it all out. Guys, you're the best. Thank you for doing this with us.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan.